this morning. My name is Cadet Robert Woody. I'm from Oak Island, North Carolina. I graduated from South Brunswick, so the team beat in sports all the time. Kind of unfortunate. But yeah, this is just a brief I'm here to give about West Point and the admissions process. Like I said, I'm from Oak Island, North Carolina. I'm a nuclear engineering major up at school. So even if you don't want to go to West Point, I'm more than happy to talk to you about that. Plenty of places in North Carolina you can go to do it. So before we really get into the weeds on what West Point is, we want to talk about what it is that it can offer you. So every West Point graduates with a Bachelor's of Science, which in today's world, that's extremely powerful. Every cadet is on full scholarship. That means that your tuition's paid for, room and board, meals, even your medical expenses. And every cadet also gets a stipend. As a plebe or a freshman, that's $200. As a sophomore, you get $250. As a junior, you get $475. And then as a firstie, like me, you get $575. That's a month. So it's not too bad getting paid to go to college. Not many people can say they get that. Every graduate of West Point is a commissioned officer in the United States Army. So you don't have to worry about looking for a job for at least 5 years, which you can ask a lot of current college graduates. That's a really big comfort to have. And also, we can give you a lot of the same accommodations that you'll get at a normal school. Obviously, it'll be very different. We have 29 varsity programs. So if you like football, if you like basketball, if you like rugby or soccer, West Point does have programs that you can pursue and try to play in. Also, every cadet gets the opportunity to take a career starter loan. For me, what that looked like, it was $37,000 at a 0.8% APR, which, as a senior in college, that's a phenomenal start that I'm going to have access to in my life. That 0.8% APR is basically free money, and you have a grace period until the end of your service to actually start paying for it. So once you get to West Point, they're going to try to refine you in 4 different ways, and it'll be the same at the Naval Academy as well. First is academically. The academic program at West Point is extremely rigorous. Who knows how many credit hours some of their friends in college are taking right now? It's probably about 12 or 15 a semester. So my first semester at West Point, I took 24 credit hours. It's rigorous. It's hard. It does get a little easier while you stay. They give you a little bit of grace, but it's not too bad. And this sharpening you get in an academic environment, it'll help you in other places too. So that's why they do it. They also try to refine you physically. So every cadet has to pass a physical test. Y'all take the Air Force's physical test in ROTC?
It's similar. Air Force does 1.5 miles. We do a 1 mile run time, and we do push-ups and sit-ups.
Okay, so what that physical test consists of, it's a 3-rep max deadlift. It's a weighted ball throw, hand release push-ups, which are kind of like push-ups, but they're a little more difficult. A plank, a sprint drag carry with a weighted shuttle or weighted sled, and then a 2-mile run.
Is that the ACFT?
Yes, sir.
We've done that twice. The Army National Guard has come out and brought the equipment, set it up. And the kids enjoy it, and some of them exert themselves physically to the point of, you know what, resuming breakfast and stuff. So.
Yeah, ACFT, it's fun.
We don't do the 2-mile run at the end, though. I'm sure that's pleasurable.
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah. But at the same time, you'll take an actual Department of Physical Education physical curriculum while you're there. What that looks like as a plebe or a freshman is you take military movement, which who in the audience thinks I look like a gymnast? Thank you, but it's okay. Yeah, no, I didn't think it's something I'd be prepared for. You learn how to control your body in the oddest of ways, whether it's up on the high bars, learning how to spin, running an obstacle course, doing actual Olympic gymnastic events on a trampoline. It's pretty interesting. That, and next year you'll take survival swim, which is where if you're not a great swimmer, you start off just in the water in a bathing suit, learning the basics. But regardless of skill, you work your way up to wearing your full OCPs, a weighted vest, carrying a rifle, wearing your boots, jumping off of a 10-meter high dive. They prepare you to be ready in the water. Then you also take boxing as a sophomore. Boxing is a fun class. I like that. I'm not going to explain that to you. And the year after that, you take combatives. And that's essentially wrestling, but it's learning how to wrestle inside of the Army's actual academy. The guy who currently teaches it at West Point, Mr. Larson, wrote the Army's doctrine on how to wrestle, basically. So it's cool getting to learn from him. Then as a first year, a senior, you get to take a lifetime sport. And that's where you pick up a skill and a sport that you'll be able to play for the rest of your life. So I personally took Olympic weightlifting, which I never thought I'd be able to snatch, but they taught me how. That, but you can take golf, basketball, soccer, they do swim, cycling, cross country. They've really got something for every flavor of person. They're going to try to refine you militarily while you're there. I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. Every graduate is going to be a second lieutenant. And so you go through a 4-tier, 4-year military refinement process, which we'll get more into that later. But they basically, through varying levels of responsibility, teach you to be accountable for yourself, and then you work all the way up to being accountable for large groups of people. Which that leadership experience is something that's going to serve you well in either the Army when you graduate or in the private industry whenever you choose to leave. They also they try to refine your character. So there's a cadet honor code that we all try to live by. A cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. Can anybody tell me why that might be important?
Okay. That's like a creed. That's like a creed or something that you go by, something that you believe in.
Yeah, it's something to live by, and it's something that other people know you'll live by. And so that kind of brand that you establish for yourself, it makes you seem reliable. It makes people know you're reliable, actually. And it's something that, whether it's going to be your bosses in the Army or your bosses in the private sector, are going to see and know, I can depend on this person because I know they're honorable, and I know they're going to do me right. So I'll let you look at the accolades West Point has gotten from U.S. News, Forbes, and the Princeton Review. It's pretty impressive as far as public schools go. But what I'd really like to point you to are the number of Rhodes Scholars and the number of Marshall Scholars. So the Rhodes Scholarship is where, after your senior year, they'll send you free of charge to Cambridge to get a world-class education in England. So last year, we were number 1 with 4 scholars. They usually send about 25. So this one institution accounted for about 1/6 of the people who the United States government was choosing to send abroad to represent America. On the Marshall Scholarship, there's something similar, but yet again, last year we were number 1 with 3. Yeah. So who in here is a Ravens fan, a Steelers fan, or a Duke fan? You're a Duke fan?
I respect Cadet, but I don't like it once he's out. That's good.
Okay. What about Ravens or Steelers? Anyone? So you recognize the guy on the left? Who is he? Yeah, he was an offensive lineman before. He played for the Steelers for 10 years, and then he finished his career with the New York Ravens. That's Alejandro Villanueva. This is one of West Point's famous graduates. But that guy on the bottom, Mike Krzyzewski, what's his biggest accolade? What is he known for?
Best coach in college basketball.
He's accepted as the best coach ever in basketball history.
Who?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Go
have no
Heels,
idea.
but yeah, he even played basketball.
Really? I had no idea. That's really
But
interesting.
so he knows about basketball for sure, but one thing that has made him stand out as a coach is his ability to lead men. And this
Yeah, that's
is,
true.
West Point's really the laboratory where he was able to figure out how to do that. Then up top, you can see we have the second man on the moon as a West Point graduate, Buzz Aldrin. It's pretty cool. And anybody who's a military history geek like myself, you recognize Douglas MacArthur and Dwight Eisenhower, 34th President of the United States. Those are both West Point graduates as well. Okay. So your cadet life is going to look a lot different than what it would look like if you went to a normal college. I'm sure you've talked to your buddies who go to UNC, State, ECU. It's not really going to be that similar. So here's what your schedule is going to look like most days. I will say, outside of the summers, I usually wake up about 6:15, so don't let 5:20 scare you. But you have a busy day. You'll be in class some days from 7 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's rigorous, like we were talking about earlier. That in the afternoon from 4:15 to 6 o'clock, what you can see is a block of time called MacArthur's time. What that is, it's dedicated for cadets to actually develop yourself physically. So if you're a Division I athlete, you're going to practice. If you're a club athlete, if you played handball or something like that, you'd be going to practice as well. But for people like myself, who are mainly just students, you either play your intramural sports, because every cadet is an athlete, or it's actual physical time carved out of your day for you to go to the gym, go on a run, work on yourself, which we actually greatly appreciate. That and after dinner is really when all that time is for yourself. What does that time look like? It's you're gonna have your face in a book or type away on a computer. The homework up there is pretty tough. It's no joke. As you can see, you do get some time at the end of the day for yourself. I watch Netflix just like all you guys. So here you can see kind of a model schedule for what cadets go through in their academic curriculum. Your plebe and yearling year, or your sophomore year.
Go back one slide, or if not, you can just, I was gonna see what time you went to bed. That's say 2400. So, yeah, that's lights out, mandatory.
It's not anymore. It used, actually, lights out used to be at 01, but they had to get rid of that because people got home.
People were studying with flashlights, right?
That was me. We had lights out back in the day, and
I've heard of that.
2 o'clock in the morning, I had under my blanket, I'm with a flashlight trying to pass.
I just.
Yeah, so I sit at my desk like a normal person, but they did whatever they did.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yeah, so here's what your schedule's gonna look like. Really, the point of the academic curriculum is to turn you from a generalist, where you get all of your general knowledge, because Army officers need to know what's going on in the world, into a specialist with more of a focus in your major courses. As you can see, you don't really get into the weeds on your major until about your junior year. So as a nuclear engineer, I was sitting through English and history and philosophy, kind of building my general block of knowledge. And the same will be true at the Naval Academy. They do it the same way. That, and also, every cadet who's not an engineering major takes an engineering sequence. What those look like right now are systems engineering, environmental engineering, infrastructural engineering, or you can come with me and do nuclear engineering. So what they want is every cadet to have this broad basic knowledge. That also, throughout the course of your academic career, you take military leadership or military science courses. That's more or less just building on that foundational knowledge that you're going to need and building on your leadership skills when you're actually an officer in the Army. Anybody have any questions about the schedule? Any interesting classes?
So one interesting thing for me, came from a real small high school in North Carolina, was not a stellar student. I struggled every day at West Point. But if you try, Naval Academy too, if you try, they have a support system that will keep you in there. And that's at the bottom where it says 8-to-1 student to faculty. That was so important. They have a lot of personal one-on-one time. They have so many systems there now to help you make it through if you're having academic problems, mental problems, whatever, personal problems. I think it's a lot more.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just.
Is there a blend of military, active duty military, and civilian faculty?
There is, yes sir. It's about 75-25.
Yeah.
That's about the ratio. I think we've got
Military to civilian?
Military to civilian. And so the majority of my teachers are uniformed service members. But I will say it is kind of refreshing to get the civilian perspective. Like I had a civilian, right now I'm in constitutional law, and I also took philosophy earlier on. You discuss things like the law of armed conflict. And so in philosophy, I had a civilian. We were actually having really interesting, intriguing conversations just due to our difference in perspectives.
The PMS at UNC Chapel Hill now is brand new. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hurd. I think it's Dan. He taught at West Point last year, the year before. I don't know if you knew him, but it was interesting. He earned a Silver Star in battle and several Bronze Stars, and they sent him to Yale and then brought him back to West Point to teach, and now he's at Chapel Hill as a professor of military studies. That's a phenomenal record. I was impressed, so impressed with that. The quality of that education is incredible.
It is, and that is one thing. So if you want to come back and teach at West Point, they send you to get a master's degree first. So being a physics and nuclear engineering major, I've had teachers go to some of the best STEM schools in the country. MIT, the University of Michigan, even North Carolina State. If y'all don't realize how good of an engineering school that is, I've had teachers who go there. Yeah. So I'll give you guys a minute to kind of look over your list of majors up here. They've really got a flavor for every academic interest you might have. A lot of people come and they think, well, West Point actually used to be just an engineering school, basically. Everyone graduated with a generic Bachelor's of Science in Engineering. But really, they branched out. So I myself am a nuclear engineering major, hiring with a data science and operations research major and a sociology major. So there really is a pretty broad variety of whatever academic interest you think you might find yourself wanting to pursue.
I believe West Point has one of the largest academic major selections of the other service academies. Maybe the highest, you know?
I mean, I've heard it's the largest,
I
but
think it
I'm
may
not
be the
sure
highest,
about it.
with 36.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And so while you're developing yourself academically, you're also learning to develop yourself militarily. So this is kind of that tiered process I was talking about earlier. First thing you go through is cadet basic training. It's 6 weeks the summer before you get there. And what that looks like is you're learning to become accountable for yourself. You learn the basic skills that a soldier might need to have. It's definitely not nearly as intensive as Army basic training might be in terms of that individual skill development, but it's really where you learn to take care of yourself. Then you go through cadet field training the year after. That's really your first rep at leadership that you're going to get. In the Army, squads are made up of teams, and this is where you learn how to lead a team. So I had 5 people who I was responsible for when we were running around in the woods practicing our soldier skills. And honestly, that's a blast. You got to Camp Buckner for 4 weeks, and it's a really good time. Then after that, your summers become a lot less structured and a lot more individualized. So the first thing you can do is called Cadet Leadership Development Training. What that looks like is you're learning to lead at the platoon level. So who knows how big a platoon is? And it's about 40 people. And I will say it's a little bit of a shock whenever you have 40 people looking to you for the first time and you're trying to take them through a mission, take them through getting back home safe. It's really a great rapid leadership. Then you can do cadet troop leader training. What that looks like is you go out into the regular Army for 3 weeks and you basically do a short internship for a second lieutenant. This summer I found myself out at Fort Carson, Colorado, which is sandwiched directly in between Colorado Springs and Denver. So what I got to do was go out and have fun with real soldiers and learn how I was going to do my job. More of the admin side of it, but got to learn how I was going to do my job. I got to do so in one of the most beautiful and most awesome places on earth. I was in Denver, I got to watch the Rockies and the Nuggets. You don't really get that kind of sports in North Carolina. Also, you're able to just get out and explore, which is so much fun. I've been able to see the world as a result of being at West Point. That one, you also do a leadership detail. They call it a training detail up here, but that's another rapid leadership. What that consists of is you're taking other cadets through one of these parts of through the training model. So I was a company commander last summer, and so what I did was I took about 130 kids, and I was responsible for getting them through cadet basic training. It's probably going to be your most intensive rapid leadership. You're hands-on all the time. You're not just making sure they're good, you're making sure what they're about to do is good. You're making sure that what they just did was good. Because not only are you trying to make sure they're having a good experience, you're trying to make sure that the program itself gets better, and whoever's actually running it next year can use your comments, use what you found to make it run better as well. Then you can either do an IED, which is either for Division I athletes, that's in the summer, you're doing your fall camp, or your summer camp, doing whatever you need to do to get ready for your season. Or you can do academic opportunities. These are where they send cadets out in the world to actually do real internships. I've had buddies who've gone to Goldman Sachs, the UN, they've gone to Germany just to do a cultural exchange. And the opportunities really are endless, and they're pretty great. And then finally, you can do a military qualification school. So those are what those 2 pictures on the left are from. That's Air Assault School. It's pretty difficult to get in the real Army. They'll send people to jump out of planes a lot, but not really. They won't teach you how people get familiar with helicopters too frequently. And so what you need to do in that school, kind of the culminating event, it's about a 50-yard rappel out of a helicopter. We were still on the way up. That's actually me on the right. You can see the 2 people in the helicopter. It's a good time, and it's also something that your soldiers are going to respect when you get out into the real Army. They're going to say, oh, this guy has done this, or he's done that. It's kind of a skill identifier that they'll be able to know you have, which is pretty cool. So your experience as a second lieutenant isn't going to be uniform with everyone else. There are 17 different main branch opportunities you can go into, whether that's more of the HR side or whether you actually want to be running around, sleeping in the woods, doing the actual Army stuff. The jobs are really endless. I find out my branch, not this Thursday, but the one after. I'm hoping to be an armor officer. And Colonel Heath, would you like to talk about your branch?
I was infantry. I decided to go be a ground pounder, and I went airborne ranger, and all that good stuff for a while. But just to play off on a little bit and go beyond what you're doing here, you got a 5-year commitment after you graduate, but some people, like guy I live with in my community, he stayed for 30 years. The Army was his life, and he enjoyed it. He retired. I stayed 6 years in the active Army and got out and ended up working for Department of Defense contractors, Lockheed, Texas Instruments. And at the same time, I stayed in the Army Reserves for 22 years. I didn't plan on that, it just happened. But I stayed in the active Army Reserves for 22 years and switched around from branch to branch depending on where I lived. Got to travel to Europe, Turkey, numerous other places in the world. So you can take your career however you want it, but West Point, as Campbell is telling you, gives you a great foundation to go wherever you want to go.
Any comments on aviation for officers? I know the majority of aviation in the Army flying, hands-on will be by enlisted, I believe.
Well,
Or warrants.
Yes, sir, warrant officers. So officers in the Army, up until about their major time, so about probably about the 10 to 12 year time frame, they actually do fly. So let's say if you're flying actual Black Hawk helicopters, or if that's the aircraft you're assigned to, as a second lieutenant, you'll actually lead a platoon of Black Hawks from your front when you're flying, yeah. And so it is funny, mainly a lot of the warrant officers that you see in aviation are former commissioned officers who decided they wanted to keep flying and didn't want to get removed from that.
They took a warrant rank.
Yep, so they took a warrant rank to actually stay behind the controls.
That's amazing.
It is.
And I think it's still true, there's more ships and there's more flying opportunities in the Army than there is in the Air Force and Navy.
We've got a really bad habit of being in first. Sorry about that.
That low and slow, though, gets you killed. So.
Yeah, it will.
I had to throw that in.
Yeah. So we're going to actually start talking about the application process now. So if you're thinking about applying, this is where you might want to start paying attention. Your actual application is due the 31st of January of your senior year. That's going to be what's actually getting turned into the school. That's your essays, your test scores, your letters of recommendation from teachers. That's when all that is due. But even before that, or mostly, it depends on the nomination source, you have to get a nomination. What this looks like is you're getting basically you're getting a stamp of approval from either a senator, so for anybody going through the process now, it's going to be Senator-elect Bud next year, or Senator Tom Tillis, or you can get one through your congressman, which, is it David Rouser for your stuff? And so that will be David Rouser for y'all. So they usually have contacts at their office you can find if you want to actually go through that. But one of the areas where we see a surprising amount of people get weeded out in the applications process is in the actual Department of Defense Medical Evaluation Review Board. This is where they want to make sure that you're actually physically qualified and you're a smart investment to put an education into. Because if you have some kind of pre-existing medical or health condition, it might rule you out from the application process. And there are some eligibility requirements. Looks like, I'm not seeing any rings on any fingers, so I don't think anybody's married. It doesn't look like anybody's pregnant either, so I think we're good.
If you got married, can you get divorced and then go? I'm kidding. Can we go back one?
Yes, sir.
There's a presidential nomination if the parent was, if you're active duty, I guess, or if there's a parent that's a retiree. There's a vice president you can apply for. There's another one, I'm gonna put a plug in, JROTC nomination, it's not many, but if you're an honor unit like we are, then West Point will accept a nomination from us. If we're not an honor unit, they won't. Air Force will in some cases, sometimes they won't either. That's another reason why I hammer home we want to be an honor unit, because it opens opportunities for us. And it is another opportunity for any Laney student to become a cadet in our unit, and if they excel, to qualify for a JRTC nomination. So it's another source, at least, of a nomination.
So this is what the actual application is going to look like. Excuse me. So about 60% of your application is going to be how you performed academically in high school. So that's going to be what your GPA was. They do accept weighted GPAs, so whatever honors, whatever AP. I don't know if they do IPs here. They did in South, but whatever you did, that's where all that's going to come into play. That's your test scores as well, your SAT, ACT. So that's where all that gets turned in. About 30% of your application is going to be your leadership experience. So that could be a school office you held or a class office, something you did in a club, something you did in a sport, whether you were your JROTC, battalion commander, company commander, you know. That's where they want to see what leadership potential you have based off of what your capabilities and what you've been able to do in the past are. And then the final 10% is the candidate fitness assessment, which, Sam, do you want to tell everybody in here about that?
Yeah, the candidate fitness assessment, it's not that difficult. It's a 1 mile run after you complete some physical things like 1 minute of push-ups, 1 minute of sit-ups, as many pull-ups as you can do. Basketball throw, that's the hardest one for me. Way less than the average. And then shuttle run, yeah, is the last one. And then you go and run a 1 mile run.
Yeah, everyone thinks they're an athlete until it's time to get on your knees and throw a basketball.
I need to see what this looks like.
It's a humbling experience, I'll say that much.
So how far is it going?
One thing about the SAT, ACT, they, as you can see, 60% of you get a cumulative whole score. You get ranked by your file that you create if you want to go to West Point. And get so many points for this and that and the other. SAT and ACT, as you can see, are pretty important. And West Point super scores. I think all the academies super score. And so what that means is you take it as many times as you can stand it, because if you make 650 on the verbal and 750 on the math, and the next time it's reversed, they take the two best components of that test and put them together to make your best score. So you want to take it as many times as you can to get your highest score. A lot of people don't understand that. Oh, one thing, I don't know if you're going to bring it up, if you're there yet or not. There are a number of ways to get nominations. You have to have one nomination. The best way, the most common way, as Campbell said, is through your congressional folks, your senators or your representatives. But there are a number of other ways, like you said, JROTC, and another way, if down the road, I think you were talking about enlisting in the Army, if you're talking about going a different route, ROTC, or enlisting in the service, you can, as long as you meet the age eligibility, you can come in if you decide, hey, now I want to be an officer and I want to go to West Point. You can come in through the enlisted ranks, and there's I forgot how many. I think there's several hundred appointments that are given through the enlisted ranks, and they go unused every year because, for whatever reason, enlisted folks, the company commanders that are out there don't publicize it enough or whatever. So just keep that in mind.
Exactly, yeah. Here's just all that.
Oh, okay.
You're good. You're good. Just something important just to kind of take a mental picture of or whatever, is if you don't know how to contact your senator or representative, just go to house.gov or senate.gov. It's that easy. You can type in your actual physical town or zip code or whatever, and it'll take you to whoever your representative is. Give you a general phone number you can call, and whoever's at the front desk at that office will be more than happy to patch you through whoever they think can help you best. So they take care of you pretty
On
well.
this slide, you see this asterisk about must be an honor unit. Again, my people that are here, I don't do it for ego. I do it because it's good for Laney, it's good for Wilmington, it's good for school board, it's good for the district, it's good for you. And you always want to be the best you can be in anything you do. So that's why I want to do that. Another one, that's not service connected, but I think another may be Medal of Honor recipients, I think they get an automatic nomination, obviously not an appointment. Is that check with you? I've read that somewhere.
Yeah, I'm
Not
not sure
sure.
that
Medal of Honor
especially
recipient.
their children.
Children of Medal of Honor recipients. I believe.
Children of Medal of Honor.
Yeah, which is pretty great.
The children of Medal of Honor winners, if they qualify, they're in. They're in.
That applies to
Yeah.
about 7 people in the United States.
Right.
So there are some things you can do if to either prepare yourself to get better or if maybe you don't get in on the first try. First thing that a lot of people do is the summer leadership experience. You kind of get like a first general exposure to West Point. It's a week up there and you go through academic workshops. I remember when I did it, I did civil engineering, electrical engineering, and military history, which learning from military history as a history nerd from the actual curator of the West Point Museum was a pretty cool experience. That you get to spend 2 days out in the woods doing Army stuff, which was pretty fun for me as a high schooler. So it's one of those things where even if you're not sure if you'd like to go or not, it's something that looks great on an application for another college, or it is something that might convince you want to go yourself. If you're not quite, if you could use a little bit of maturing, whether that's academically or basically any reason the academy might deem you as a really good fit, but maybe not quite ready, one opportunity that they offer is the United States Military Academy Preparatory School. And it's a mile up the hill, so it's just right there beside campus. What you can do there is take a year to develop whatever they think you might need to develop then. I know my roommate actually went to prep school, and his was math. And so he took an actual academic curriculum, but he had face-to-face interactions with a math tutor 2 days out of the week, basically curating, kind of just developing whatever skills they felt he needed to work on, which for him it was calculus and that. But now he's an operations researcher, data science major, so he's not struggling with that. And then also kind of offering similar opportunities are the civil preparatory schools. They're listed right there. Could you talk about the AOG scholarships that they do for those?
Sure. We've got a Hoggard graduate of last year at Georgia Military College right now, doing really well. And if he finishes, if you are placed by West Point at one of these civil prep schools, and there are very few slots that they give out. And they're for mostly candidates that are fully qualified across the board. Academically, medically, they got a nomination, passed the CFA, but they didn't quite make it into West Point. They just didn't quite make the cut. They'll place them at one of these prep schools. And it just gives another year of maturation for them. And if they finish that year, there's like a 95% chance that they're going to get an appointment into West Point the next year. I forgot what you asked me. Oh, and the prep schools, are for folks, candidates that are fully qualified. And as Campbell said, the prep school is on West Point grounds, sort of, mile up the road, and it's for candidates that are or have a weakness in one area that they need to work on. The prep schools are financed by the Association of Graduates, AOG, West Point. And I can't quote you the exact numbers, but it costs the candidate about a third of what it normally would cost to go to one of those prep schools. And the prep schools, civil military schools, I think it runs upwards of $12,000 to $15,000 a year. But if you get placed there, it's like a third or less than that.
And just kind of the funny aside, can anyone take a guess at what the #1 reason people get sent to the civil prep schools are?
Behavior. If they were trying to send my brother to
Academics, because they had a twin. Because just based off of the way that the nominations process is, they try to get a pretty good geographic sample of the country at West Point. And so let's say I have a twin, and we're both competing for David Rouser's nomination. We can't get in the same year. So, I mean, it's funny. I actually know 5 people that's happened. Just a funny little aside.
How
do you pick who gets the short straw?
Exactly. They make the parents choose.
Right.
I wonder how.
Well, being a twin myself, I know one's always better.
You mean a literal twin? Not just
I wonder
somebody
how
that would be like you on
that
paper, or a
Identical,
literal twin.
identical or fraternal
Okay.
twins, yeah. It's just something we can go and take a look at for a minute. This is the demographics for the class of 2026. So they had just under 13,000 people apply. 9,000 of these people got knocked off just trying to get the nomination. So that just shows how important that piece of the process is. It may not feel important because you're not actually turning anything into the school. This is something you're just doing to some elected official you've never met before. As you can see, that is where about 3/4 of the class got, that's where they kind of got stopped. And then 15% of the people who got nominated weren't qualified physically. And so that's the importance of doing that DOD-MERB exam super early. Because if you do get disqualified, you can get a waiver depending on what your actual condition or injury is. And most people, they actually give waivers. They give waivers for most things. So that's something to look at. And also, you can look at the academic statistics that you can see up there. They're pretty solid, you know. 1330 SAT and a 30 ACT, those are just the averages. That's higher than UNC, it's higher than state. I think Duke's probably got to be. It's pretty, that's pretty high. And also just looking at the caliber of applicants that you're going to be applying against, there were almost 80 valedictorians and there were 129 class presidents. So that's just the kind of leaders that are trying to come to West Point that you're competing against. Also, 756 team captains. That just kind of goes to reinforce not only that every cadet is an athlete, but you have to be able to be a leader, be an athlete. You have to be able to kind of mesh these. It's kind of interdisciplinary approach to how you're applying all your skills.
Just one thing, Campbell, that block that shows valedictorians and class president, I mean, those are, yes, if you're one of those, you're top notch, and that gives you a lot of points for leadership toward your cumulative goal score. But what this slide to me, and I try to tell candidates, is don't get intimidated by this slide. They want an active, well-rounded person. So they want you involved in something. Volunteering, being a team leader, teaching church classes, going to Boys Girls State, being school, joining a club and being the treasurer or the vice president or some position. They want an active, well-rounded person. So we can't all be team captains and class presidents, but they want you just not sitting on the couch or, they want you out in the community, being active, looking for leadership type of positions.
I don't see a video game champion up there.
Not really.
Maybe later.
Maybe for the video game team captain. Yeah. And so if anything today has kind of resonated with you, or even if you just think it might be an interest, I would highly recommend you take a picture of this guy right here's contact information. Major Mark Owens is the Southeastern Admissions Regional Commander. So he would kind of be your direct liaison at the school that you're emailing back and forth with, trying to get admissions help. But also, each one of the folders, if anybody wants one, we should have some extra if you don't have one already, have Colonel Heath's contact information, a little business card taped to the inside. So he could also be a source of admissions help if you find that you need it.
Yeah, he is usually it's a major or captain. He's the Southeast Regional Commander at admissions. Sometimes he's hard to get a hold of. I am your admissions representative in the local area. So Brad also works in the field for us, Mr. Irby's, and we act as your local boots on the ground, so to speak. If you need an interview, if you've got any questions and you can't get a hold of the admissions at West Point, if you need the CFA administered, things like that, we can help with that.
Colonel Heath did my interview during my
That's right.
applications process. Yeah, well, guys, I appreciate you for letting us come talk to you today. Does anyone have any questions?
What are some admirable traits that are, like someone applying to West Point?
Admirable traits. I mean, one thing that they will ask to see for is that you're resilient, that you're able to display perseverance. I feel like that's probably something that's pretty common, not only amongst talking to different classes and applicants and students. It's something that they saw in their application process. It's going to be something that a lot of schools ask to see. I can actually recall a prompt right now. It was literally just, tell us one time where you persevered. And so, I mean, you have to be able to demonstrate some point in your life where you didn't let something put you down, you pushed through and did whatever you needed to do. Yeah.
Can you tell us what a tactical officer is at West Point?
Yeah, sure. So there are actually tactical officers and tactical NCOs. NCO, who knows everybody knows what an NCO is? Let's go to ROTC. And so it's an officer and an NCO who actually have an office on the floor of the building where you live, which sounds scary. It kind of sounds like mom and dad living right down the hallway. But their main purpose is not only to see you through West Point administratively, but it's also to kind of be in charge of your development while you're there. They're your first mentor you go to when you have a problem. If you need to talk, if you've got a question about the big army, if you've got a problem that's arisen, which I understand this is different than when y'all went through. They're actually there for you, like just as a person more than as a soldier or a cadet, which is pretty. It's a pretty cool experience. They're also.
You all didn't have that experience?
Not with the tactical officer, no.
The cool thing is they're actually around for all of your class events as well. So my TAC officer she's the one who gave me my class ring. She'll be there when I get my diploma. You get to form like a pretty cool connection with them because they see you grow. They see you hit these benchmarks. But at the same time, they also do see you get a bad grade, so you gotta watch out. Anything else, guys?
Any question? Okay, tell us about your ring. When do you get the ring? When does a cadet earn that?
Yeah, so it's the second weekend of your senior year. And it's funny because they jinx you pretty hard because they make you put in your order for it before Christmas break of your junior year. But yeah, so it's a really big ceremony where everybody gets down to this place called Trophy Point, which is where a lot of the important stuff there happens. It's this scenic overview looking over the Hudson. About 5 miles down the river, you can see a town called Poughkeepsie. It's beautiful. And basically you get up. Getting your ring is kind of like another way of assurance, like showing that you're prepared, you're committed to actually moving on past West Point, doing whatever that's going to require you to do.
West Point started class rings, by the way.
1839.
Yeah.
First ever class.
You go to the library there, they have them all the way from when they started. One interesting thing is when you graduate, I spent 6 years in and then went to work for Ford Motor Company and then General Electric. My instructor, chemistry instructor at West Point, I saw him later at General Electric. He was in charge of nuclear licensing. Worked in nuclear at GE. But opportunities present themselves sometimes. So he started an engineering consulting firm, and he asked me to come along to work at that firm I worked there for 6 years. But you'll meet classmates and all as long, and opportunities will present themselves, and you'll have those relationships. You'll have relationships in normal colleges too, but these are a bit stronger. And as you get older, my company mates back in 73 when I graduated, we still get together and we have Zoom calls just to catch up on stuff every other month. One of my classmates was from Honduras, so he's on those calls too. So it becomes interesting in terms of keeping in touch with people and opportunities opening up for you out both in the service and out of the service.
Yes, sir.
I got a question for you. How about West Point, the town? Like, what's the population of it? And then can you go there? And when can you go there? At what point during your educational experience can you go to town, leave the campus?
Yeah, so just outside of West Point is a town called Highland Falls. And it's probably about 5,000 people. It's not huge. It's got a couple restaurants and places for you to eat, places for you to go hang out when you're an upperclassman. But it's really not. It's not necessarily what you think of as a college town. But I mean, you can actually go and leave and go into Highland Falls as a freshman, but your privileges kind of evolve while you're there. So freshmen can take walking privileges, which is staying within a 10-mile radius. Then after that, sophomores, juniors, and seniors can take, it's called off-post privileges. That's when you get a 75-mile radius to go do whatever you want, but you have to be back that night for taps, which is 1 o'clock on the weekends. And it's 75 miles, actually, it includes New York City. So I mean, there have been a lot of days where we just go, head down into the city for the day and just have a blast. But at the same time, as a senior, I can leave post however many weekends throughout the school year that I want. And I can go spend the night, do whatever, just got to tell somebody where I'm going. As a freshman, you get to do that twice. You get 2 base passes. They'll give you some free 3-day weekends, just depending on like how the core is doing, if you're experiencing success or anything like that. But one cool thing that they offer is a spirit pass. That is, you get 1 a semester. That is a plane ticket and a ticket to the game wherever you want to go where Army's playing sports. So I actually took advantage of that 3 weeks ago to go to Dallas to watch the Army Air Force game. That was a blast. And it's like I said, I've been able to see the world through West Point. Not only just from getting away from North Carolina, just being in that general area. I mean, this semester I've been to Boston, Philadelphia, went all through Connecticut, Hartford, Glastonbury. Been out west, got to see Colorado, Texas. I'm going to California to see my buddies here in about 3 weeks over Christmas break. I mean, it's definitely more than a lot of people from Brunswick County, which I can speak to. Not many people get to get out and see the world, but possibly in Hanover County as well, people do.
No questions, cadets? Amazing. So tell them what happens, this is, I think, kind of funny and interesting. What happens to the bottom graduate of each class? What are they called?
It's called the GOAT. And so the person who graduates last in each class, they collect donations for them. And so every person in the class will give them at least $1. And on graduation, when they walk through, everyone knows who it is. And the dean, which is a brigadier general, which is a pretty important guy, will stand up and start losing his mind, celebrating, throws this guy a bag, and it'll have about $10,000 in cash.
So you're doing a good thing.
Yeah, and so it's funny, people try to compete for it, but the dangerous thing about
Without getting
competing
kicked out.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But it's funny, my class currently is 1,005. We started at 1219, so there's pretty good attrition there. But
How did you start?
1219.
1219.
I've got a buddy who's 1,003, so he's working on it.
That's fun.
How do you feel you're changed since you were these students' age?
I definitely feel like I'm a more capable person in a lot of ways. One of them is like this summer, being a company commander. I was up in front of those 130 people for probably 2 hours out of the day every day. So like, there was a time when I would have been standing up here shaking, like nervous, but at the same time, I can give a presentation in class. Like I went and talked to the West Point Society on Saturday, came back to watch a football game, which is fun, but sat up there and answered questions for about an hour, and it just kind of rolls off. It gives you a greater confidence in yourself, which is, it can serve you well.
He was definitely under pressure too, with a lot of these old grads asking him tough but weird questions.
So yeah, you got to see those.
Oh, yeah.
I'll ask you one more since we have time. We got a few minutes for the middle. This is something that was always very important to me, and I'm sure you probably started thinking about this. When you commission, and regardless of which branch you go into, you're going to be charged with leading men and women soldiers. Have you thought about the gravity of leading enlisted people, the significance of that?
Yes, sir. One thing that we hear incredibly frequently, which I think some people kind of get callous to, which is sad, but they talk about how you're about to be responsible for America's sons and daughters. Not only is that, so if I want a branch armor, that's not going to be a platoon of 40, that'll be a platoon of about 16. That's not 16 names. It's not 16 people who are driving the tank or operating the gun. That's 16 lives. That's 16 sources of potential for hundreds of years of life and experiences to happen. And the fact that they've chosen to take that potential, put it into a pretty risky business so that they can serve their country, that's pretty incredible. And so I think it's, like you're saying, the gravity. I think the gravity of that responsibility is huge. And it's both, it's a burden and a privilege, because it's on you to not only put this potential to good use, but also to ensure that it stays safe.
Great.
All right, guys, that's all I got for you.
Proud of
Hey.
Colonel, I got the memorandums and commission points for
Yeah, I'll stay up here for a couple minutes if you like to ask any questions.
Okay.
Sure.